We're going to get our afternoon started. Please continue eating. We know you want to make sure you're outside in time for the kickoff, and we've got a lot of wonderful business to conduct this afternoon. My name is Jim Schmidt. I have the honor and privilege of serving as Vice President for University Advancement. Class of 1986, it's great to be back in Winona, Minnesota to cheer on the Warriors and all of our outstanding athletic teams. This morning, we've got several pieces of important business. Business that is not only important, but will be very memorable for everybody who's in attendance, including those inductees. But our first order of business is to take the chance to introduce some of the other guests that we have with us, in addition to some of our Hall of Fame inductees. With us today, we have President Darrell Kruger and his wife, Nancy. And we've got our athletic director, Larry Halstead, and his wife, Serena. Larry? And I'd like to thank all the people who've worked on the Hall of Fame Committee and the Alumni Affairs Department for pulling this event together. We certainly will be a memorable event. First order of business, you can't start anything without having a Grand Marshal. And today, of course, we've got our Heritage Award recipient and Grand Marshal of the Homecoming Parade, Dr. Fred Foss, and his wife, Marilyn. Many of you, please stand. Probably 80% of the people here had Fred in class at one time or another. Fred was famous especially for his Chemistry 100 class. You got to watch him blow things up in the lab and got to write furiously about everything you saw and had to remember. Fred was a member of the chemistry department for 41 years at Winona State. He was busy during his tenure here. He served the department as chair for 26 years, served on the faculty senate for 30 years, developed and introduced more than 12 courses that are currently being used in the chemistry major, in addition to serving as student senate advisor, even back in the days when I was on the student senate, and as advisor for Pi Lambda Phi. And so please join me in congratulating once again Fred Foss, and I'd like him to come forward as I read the plaque. Winona State University, October 19th, 2002. The Grand Marshal Heritage Award is proudly presented to Dr. Frederick W. Foss, Professor Emeritus. On behalf of the Winona State students, Student Senate, Pi Lambda Pi fraternity, faculty, and staff, it is with great honor that we acknowledge and recognize the countless hours, numerous contributions that you have bestowed upon this university. Your dedication to Winona State has not gone unnoticed, nor will it ever be forgotten. You are an asset to the Winona State community, and we are forever grateful. Thank you, Dr. Foss. Last night, many of you maybe weren't aware, we had just an awesome evening. We invited back all of those recipients who'd been honored by the Alumni Society for Distinguished Alumni, Distinguished Young Alumni, and Distinguished Service Award. There are over 46,000 Winona State alums, and yet only about 100 have ever been given one of these honors. And we had this hall filled with prior recipients. It was just heartwarming, such a group of people that have made such a difference in the lives of many. Well, one of those people that we wanted to honor last night was not able to make it. He has been very busy this fall, and he informed me that it was he and his wife's anniversary, and he had a commitment to taking her out to dinner. And so we've added one other little distinguishing feature to this luncheon. We'd like to recognize that distinguished alum. You may have seen him in the parade. He's been busy doing some other things. Please join me in welcoming one of our distinguished alums, Tim Penny. If he'd please come forward. The award that was given to each of these alums and distinguished award recipients is a reproduction of the President's Medallion. Many of you have seen this amazing piece. It's not quite as large. It's not solid gold like the real thing is, but it is an amazing reproduction of this medallion. It was designed by former art professor Floretta Murray, and has a great deal of symbolism, and was a gift to the class in 1968, I believe. So Tim, we congratulate you, and you've honored us as you've always done, and we appreciate you coming back to your alma mater to receive this gift.
Thank you.
I'd like to recognize a few other folks in the room. You know, that's the problem when you get a distinguished group of people together like we have here. We could introduce every single person and tell a little bit about them. We've got several members of the Winona State Administration present, and I'd like them to stand, and then I'll try to see who I can see. I didn't go around and keep track. I see Carol Anderson, Dean of the College of Education, Cal Winbush, Vice President for Student Affairs and Facilities, and we've already introduced Larry. We got any other administrators that I've missed? I'd like to recognize Mike Speltz, who's the president of our Winona State Foundation. And I'd like any members of the Winona State Alumni Society, Warrior Club Board, or other foundation members just to stand to be recognized for your volunteer efforts. I can't quite see them all. Terrific. Let's give all this group a big round of applause. Well, we are privileged today privileged and honored to induct 5 new people into the Winona State Athletic Hall of Fame. These folks, I have the privilege of serving on this committee, and I need to tell you what an exciting process this is, to go back and not only review the files and statistics, but to have so many members of the committee that have either played with some of these athletes or were on the staff here and we're very familiar with it. We have had just a proud tradition of outstanding athletes, not only while they're at Winona State, but so many of them have gone on to do terrific things in their professional career that have advanced the course of athletics and the maturing of young men and women all across this country. Our first inductee is none other than Dr. David Rislove. Dave has been a fixture here at Winona State from the time he enrolled when this university was 100 years old. 1958. Not David wasn't 100, the university was 100. His devotion and support to Winona State has been unwavering. He came to Winona State from Rushford High School. I grew up in Houston. There was always a little rivalry there. He was a 3-sport athlete competing in football, baseball, and track. He brought these talents to Winona and was a 4-year letter winner in football and 2-year letter winner in track. Dave was named to the NIC All-Conference First Team in 1960, 1961, and for football. And in fact, in 1960, Winona State defense only allowed 35 points in the 8 games they played and was nationally ranked. There was a defensive line. After graduating from Winona State in 1962, Dave went on to earn his doctorate at North Dakota, and in 1968, he was back to Winona State to teach. Last night, I've got a script, so I read some of this, but last night I spoke to so many distinguished alums, and they love reminiscing, and they talk about old times, and they always talk about their favorite faculty members, and Dave's name came up time and time again. He's just made so many contributions to this wonderful university. As a chemistry professor, he was very active in the administrative and support side of athletics. Dave organized the first and second NIC Hall of Fame celebrations in 1985 and 1990, and was elected to the NSIC Hall of Fame in 2000. He was the Winona State faculty representative for athletics for 31 consecutive years. Now, Dan Schumacher just got up, but I heard the story last night or this morning that when you saw Dave Rislove ride his bike up to the football field before a game, you knew there was trouble because a player wasn't going to be eligible. And this man had to keep track of all of it. He was executive secretary for the Conference Board of Control for 18 years, including 6 years as president, and he's been an active member in the Warrior Club for over 9 years and served 1 term as president. And although he retired in 1999, I think he spends as much time on campus as when he taught. Dave is almost at every Winona State game and event, is always willing to serve on university committees even after he's retired. He's been an active member of the Barbershoppers for 34 years and sings in the church choir. I was going to see if you wanted to lead us in the fight song when we were done, but after too short. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Dave Rislove, the newest inductee to the Winona State Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you. This is indeed an honor for me. Having spent a good portion of my life at Winona State as a student and a faculty member, it's really more like home than a place to work. I first got to know Winona State when I was a student at Rushford High School, and I remember some trips were made over here in the middle 50s to watch the Warriors play. And I liked the place at that time, and I was very pleased that when the time came to choose a school that I chose Winona State. It's been more than a job, as I said. It's been a love between me and this wonderful institution, and I'm so pleased and proud to be a member of the Hall of Fame, and I want to thank the selection committee for that honor, even though I'm still serving on the selection committee. However, it was truly wonderful last year when we met to find out that I finally said, well, maybe this is the year for me to be elected, because we've been talking about it for many years, and when it actually turned out right, I thought, well, at least it'll happen now, and it won't happen after I'm under the ground. So that's even better. There was something said about me playing baseball. I didn't play baseball, but at Winona State anyway. But that's just a minor thing. And when you think back about your career, things that you might have done and that you did and didn't do. One of the things that I didn't do that that's been something on my mind all these years was that I dropped out of the track program after my partway through my third year, and I wished I would have stayed and run track for the extra year or two. Problem was that there was a couple freshmen that were beating me every day, and I just felt like my time for track was over. There are some people here that I need to thank, and there's so many. Almost everyone in this room I could thank for all the support that I've gotten all these years, but there are a couple. And one is my coach from Rushford High School, who's also a member of this Hall of Fame, Soup Windblad, right back there. A wonderful guy. Thank you. One of my favorite people. And when I was a boy about 13 or 14 years old, or even younger than that, when I would play on one of his teams, and if you did something good, he would come over and he'd put his arm around you and congratulate you, and it was goosebumps from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. He was just marvelous that way. And at study halls, we'd talk, and well, it was just a relationship that I'll never forget. And he brought with him today, for the first time since he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, my old co-captain from the '61 football team, Gail Sprudy, and it's just wonderful to see Gail here. So, raise your hand, Gail. All right, good, thank you. And another person who's been an inspiration, not only when I was his student, and that isn't fair because I'm 20 years younger, I'm at least 10 years younger than he is, and he looks 20 years younger than me, and that's Fred Foss over here. I would like to acknowledge Fred for all the years that we worked together in the chemistry department. Fred was the best department head there ever was. It was like family, and I enjoyed coming to work every day and seeing Fred's face and all of the good times that we had together. Thank you so much, Fred. I need to thank my wife, Susan, for all of the years that when I was working in intercollegiate athletics and teaching chemistry and doing research and all of these things. She didn't complain when I would spend all the hours on the road at meetings and doing eligibility and all that additional work, and she's been a wonderful support. And with her and I today are 4 of my 7 grandchildren, and my 2 daughters, Kay and Lori, and my sons-in-laws, Lou and Kyle. and my mother and father, Elmer and Beatrice Rislove, my brother Phil and his wife Rebecca, and my aunt Gladys and my cousin Julie. So we've got a good showing here today, and that's really wonderful having them here too. Well, when I played for Coach Molinari, and I'm sorry that Moon isn't here, but he was here a couple of weeks ago for the 1962 football reunion, and that was another wonderful person in my life. And but when we played, and I'm going to talk about Sprudy and myself right now, because I don't know if there's anyone from the '61 team here. Is there anyone else from the? That was the last year we played. We were in between, you might say. The conference championships were won by the Warriors in '56 and '57 with Sprudy with Murtis over there and some of his players. So 1956 and '57, and then the year after I left in '62. So in between we were playing about 500 ball in those years, and the remarkable thing was that I think we won 91% of the games that we didn't lose. I'll have to think about that a little bit in there because there were some ties in there, of course. So, but I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed running track, and this was just a wonderful place. And so I'm just going to close with one other thing. I brought my briefcase for Schumacher down here, and Jason Mitchell. And you might remember out on the field with my briefcase and the eligibility certificates. Well,
Never brought me back.
I don't have any eligibility certificates, but this afternoon, when the Warriors are playing Minnesota Crookston, I'll put this on, and I'll wear this at the game. Good old Winona State. Thank you all very much.
Our next Hall of Fame inductee is Lisa Parsons, a 1992 Winona State graduate and outstanding basketball player and coach. When I read over Lisa's basketball statistics, I was amazed. She has records all over the place here. If I were to read them all, we'd be here till Tuesday, and the weather could have changed 5 times in the meantime. But here are a few of the highlights. Her WSU career records include #1 scoring average at 18.7 points a game, #1 in rebounding with 928, #1 in field goals with 761, #2 in points scored at 1,777, #2 in block shots at 170. Her single season records include #1 in scoring at 562, #1 in scoring average 22.5, and #2 in rebounding with 267. Is that amazing? What an athlete. Besides her career records, Lisa also received All-American NAIA Division II honorable mention and was All-Conference for 4 years. Lisa's been busy since she left Winona State in 1992. She earned her master's in athletic administration in 1998, went on to coach basketball at the University of Dubuque for a season, and is currently head coach and assistant volleyball coach at Hamline University. Please join me in congratulating Lisa Parsons as our next inductee into the Winona State Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Mine will be a lot shorter because I'm not very good behind the podium. If you get me on the basketball court, I'm a lot better, but I'm relatively nervous right now. Just quickly, thank you to the Hall of Fame. This is a wonderful honor. Very proud to be a Winona State graduate. You know, I recruit against Winona State, believe it or not, all the time, and I have nothing bad to say about this place. It's really been an honor to come here, the opportunities that it's offered me here, and also now when I'm a little older. I would like to thank, though, first of all, my teammates that were here. Julie's here right now, but I couldn't be up here without those guys, so that's very important. My friends and family who are here, high school and college friends. It's very important, my family, and I'm going to cry. No, I'm not. Talk myself out of it. Okay, here I go. But when it comes down to it, this is such an honor, and it's it's a privilege, and I just, I'm shocked it may sound crazy to belong to such a group of elite athletes that, quite honestly, I didn't think that I would be here. So, thank you.
Our next Hall of Fame inductee is one of our championship wrestlers. Larry Marchionda was a 4-letter winner in wrestling for Winona State from 1961 to 65. Took 3rd place in the NIC championships in 1963 and 64. Was an integral part of Winona State's outstanding wrestling program. After college, Larry continued his wrestling career. He was Wisconsin AAU Greco wrestling champion in 1968, 70, 71, 72, and freestyle champion in 70, 71, 72. Larry's achievements as coaching speaks volumes to his love of the sport and excellent coaching skills. He helped Fond du Lac Goodrich High School wrestling team earn 13 conference championships and the 1991 Wisconsin State Championship. Larry was inducted into the Wisconsin Wrestling Hall of Fame in 1983, was named Coach of the Year in 80, 88, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, and 97. He was honored as the Wisconsin Coach of the Year in 88, 91, 93. Larry finally retired after 31 years in 1999 after teaching at Fond du Lac 31 years, and the same year he was named the district's Teacher of the Year. Outstanding educator, outstanding athlete, and wrestler. Please join me in congratulating Larry Marchionda as our next inductee.
I don't know what to say. I'm very, very humbled, and I just kind of feel, I was telling Joanne on the way over here, I feel kind of out of place. Like, I'm honored and humbled to be part of the Winona State Athletic Hall of Fame, but when you put my name with all the other people, and especially the people that were being inducted today, I just don't feel, I'm humbled. I'd like to just share a story with you. My life wasn't very, very successful, and really the people that should be honored, that is not me, but it's Winona State University and the professors here at the university and my coach here at the university, because I was a project. I'm embarrassed to say that I was a project, but I was a project. But we have, this university was a big part of my life. It was a big turning point in my life. I remember one day my father was an Italian immigrant, and he settled in upstate New York. And he raised grapes and tried to raise grapes. And please don't put Napa Valley image in your mind right now. These vineyards didn't look anything like Napa Valley. The posts were crooked. There's weeds growing between the vines. And I can remember the day that my brother Dick and I were working in one of the longest rows in the vineyard, and my father was one of those people who said, today you have 12 rows to do, and when you get 12 rows done, then you're done. And you can take all day and loaf, or you can go out and get it done and have the rest of the day to yourself. Well, he knew that 12 rows was going to take you all day. And if you didn't work hard, you would be working when it was dark. And I remember one day, it was a hot sunny day, and it was like 90 degrees. And Ron and my brother can relate very, very well with this. And my brother and I had our shirts off, and we had these big old grub hooks, and our job that day was to get all the quackgrass out between the grapevines. And we had something like 12 rows, and I remember we got down the last row, and we looked down, and my father was standing at the end of the row with 3 men in business suits. And my father was the type, you had to finish that row. They were there to see us, but you didn't stop until you finished that row. We got halfway down, and I looked up and I said, "Hey, Dick, what did you do in school today?" That's the principal. I didn't do anything. It must have been you. So then I started examining my conscience. What did I do wrong in school today? And my father made them stay there for like 45 minutes, and my father was there parched in the sun, and my brother and I had blisters on our hands, and we were all dirty and sweaty. And we got down to the last row, and my father used to call me Renzo, because my name was Larry Lawrence, Renzo in Italian. Renzo, come here. And I go, oh my God, it's me. What did I do wrong? It was the principal of the school, the superintendent of the school, and somebody that I didn't know. So I walked over, and I was shaking in my boots, and he said, these guys want to know if you want to go to college and wrestle. And I'm telling you, the time was perfect. It was the coach from Winona State University, and that got me out of that vineyard row. That got me out of the hot sun. And it was a turning point in my life. And thank God it was Winona State University, because this place was wonderful. It had professors that cared about their students. And I was one that needed an awful lot of care. From the point where, sometimes I had to work, full-time job at night and then come to practice and then go home, get a few hours sleep, and then start all over again. But there are professors that really would help me and care for me. Actually, I remember my business professor would actually make me pies because she knew I didn't have food to eat. I would like to also introduce some people that are very, very instrumental in my development, and my brother Gordy. Gordy, would you stand, please? Gordy was the one that started wrestling in our family. And he was an outstanding wrestler here at Winona State University. And he was the one that used to beat me up on the front yard and in the living room and made me tougher. He gave me my first experience with Matt Burns. And it was a great developer for me, too. And I'd like to introduce they're originally from New York, but now from Missouri, Ron and Betty Marchionda. And my son Rocco, who wrestled for me in high school, was a two-time Wisconsin State champion and wrestled for the Badgers. Rocco and Michelle Marchionda. And then my fiance, Joanne Coldren. She's been very, very instrumental. She's been up here for reunions before, and we've been dating for 14 years, so I thought I would make a... We're engaged now, so I thought I'd make a commitment. It always took me a long time to do things, and graduating from here was one of those times. I would also like to thank people who really meant a lot to me here, and they were my classmates and my teammates, and not only my teammates in wrestling, but here our teammates were all sports. We were a family. The football team and the basketball team and the cross-country team. I mean, we weren't like wrestlers or basketball players or football players. We were a family. We did things together, and we still are a family. And without their support, I don't know if I would have made it. They were always there, and I always wanted to come back to be with them, and it's so nice to see them here. And I really would love to have you give them a big round of applause, my teammates from all sports. And of course, you can't forget your parents, can you? You know, my father was the one that taught me that you never stop until the row is finished. And he gave me that work ethic that when you got on a task, you didn't quit, you kept going, and that just from that little lesson of making sure you got that row done before you quit. I had to get through Winona State before I stopped, and there were so many times that I almost didn't make it. As I said, I was a project, but thanks to this university and the staff and my teammates and my father helping me. And then, of course, I can't forget my mother, who was such a devoted mom to 6 children, trying to raise a family on a vineyard that we couldn't keep the post standing up. But she did a great job, and you know, I really would like to thank her. just want to conclude by saying thanks to Bob Gunner. Bob was not only my coach, he was my mentor, he was my advisor, he was my father, he was my friend. He still is my friend, and he still is my father. He is the one person in my life that was responsible for everything and all my accomplishments, because I would be nowhere, and I sincerely mean this, without the efforts of my wrestling estate, Bob Gunner. And that's why I feel so like I don't deserve to be here, because if it weren't for all of the people that I mentioned, I wouldn't be here. And so please, this award should be for them, and I'll accept it, but in my heart, it's for all the people that were responsible for me and what I became because of them. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Our next Hall of Fame inductee is Joseph J.D. Barnett. J.D. graduated from Winona State in 1966. Had a conversation with Mo Weber last week. I actually got to see him in D.C. He's underwent bypass surgery and heart valve replacement this week, but really wishes he could have been here to personally congratulate J.D. See, Mo recruited J.D. for Winona State. He literally drove down to Missouri, brought him back to play baseball, stole him away from the University of Missouri, according to Mo. J.D. played baseball, basketball while at Winona State. Mostly as a pitcher, J.D. appeared in 21 games and 30 at-bats and finished with a .233 career batting average. He threw a 7-inning no-hitter on May 22, 1965 against Bemidji State to win the conference championship. J.D. played professionally for 4 years with the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, and from 1977 to 1999, J.D. coached collegiate basketball. His coaching awards, let's see if I got my pages in the right order. His coaching awards, including Southland Conference Coach of the Year in 1979 while coaching at Louisiana Tech, Sun Belt Conference Coach of the Year 1983 and 84, Virginia Sports Information Director Coach of the Year 1984, Missouri Valley Conference Coach of the Year in 1986, and Virginia Commonwealth University Athletic Hall of Fame induction in 1996. Please help me and congratulate J.D. Barnett as our next inductee into the Hall of Fame.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee for considering me. I don't get back to Winona State very often. I'm now in New Orleans. The two occasions were when I would become a distinguished alum in 1990. Last night was a wonderful evening for us. This university has meant a tremendous amount to me. And I got to start off with Mo Weber. To make the story conclusive, I was working at a baseball camp in Honeywell, Missouri, and Mo Weber was the head of instruction. And I was going to the University of Missouri at the time, and Missouri had called me in, as many coaches do, and say, you can no longer play basketball, you can only play baseball. And I happened to be a relatively good baseball player, but I had a tremendous love for the game of basketball. And so I had to try to find some place that would allow me an opportunity to continue my college basketball career. And Mo says, we're going to take a little ride north. And he had a brand new 64 Buick White Riviera. And for a guy from the country, had 25 in his graduating class and had been at a university of about 20,000, was lost getting across campus, this was going to be kind of a journey. So we journeyed up here, and we saw such a beautiful country. And I'll never forget meeting Dr. McCowan, meeting our basketball coach, and the opportunity to come here and compete. There was one thing that was important to understand when you was a college basketball player. When you had a guy like Mouse on your team, the only thing you had to do is throw it to him and get out of his way and let things happen. And then try to stop the ball from getting together in the court too fast. So, Mouse, I appreciate all the things that you did and for allowing us an opportunity to compete. For all the people that are here that have been in the Hall of Fame and are in the Hall of Fame, such as Mouse, congratulations to you in receiving this honor. I, too, am humbled. I'd like to congratulate the other inductees that have been inducted this year. And I guess I have to say that my greatest accomplishment from this institution was I married a young lady from here. She's a Norwegian. Our oldest daughter is Tonya, so anybody that's from Norwegian now. Down in Louisiana, she's getting her doctorate this year. She's doing her dissertation now. They call it many things, but we call it Tonya. My wife got her master's here. If sometimes I act kind of strange, it's because she has a PhD in psychology. Is an assistant professor in psychology and heads up undergraduate programs, and just got her certification in alcohol and addiction abuse, so she has that license and certification. So she's starting up a new curriculum. Susan, would you please stand up? Because you have to stand up. Educations mean a lot to the Barnett family. I was a first-generation graduate. My wife was a first-generation graduate. We now have a daughter that's getting her doctorate. We have a daughter that's going to graduate with one of her degrees this May from LSU. So it's meant a lot to us, and it's led us a lot of places. My wife and I have had the opportunity to travel worldwide because of the game of basketball. And I would never had the opportunity had it not been from the standpoint that when I left here to play professional baseball, a guy named Ron Ecker invited me back to be a graduate assistant basketball coach. So this is where it all happened for me in college basketball. And from there, I've had an opportunity to coach teams that have been nationally ranked, and it all started here. And there was a guy named Dr. Fleming. I never can go anywhere that I don't think about him. Is at my time in my era in '66 when I graduated, there was somebody else trying to draft me besides a professional baseball organization, and it was called the Army. And Dr. Fleming was at the time a colonel, and he's looking for junior officers because he didn't have any second lieutenants to spit on. And he needed a few of those, and he needed some medical service people, and I was relatively intelligent in some courses, and especially the sciences. So I had an opportunity to become a medical service corps officer also, and serve my institution that way, and serve my country that way, and it was because of Dr. Fleming. Again, I want to thank the Hall of Fame Committee, Dr. Kruger, who's been so gracious to us. We came up here in '90. We came in here last night to a tremendous opportunity, and obviously to my wife, who has directed me, led me, and in December we will have been married 37 years. So it's been quite a while. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, our final inductee today is a personal favorite of mine. It's always been a joy seeing Clarence come back for all of these Hall of Fame luncheons throughout the year, and it's wonderful to have the opportunity to have him be our next inductee. Clarence Currier grew up in the Manderville area, made his home in Winona for many, many years. He graduated from Winona State in 1929 and has been a friend of the university forever. He served as president of the Winona State University Foundation, was active in the Cagers Club, and played an instrumental role in establishing this very Hall of Fame. Clarence started back with the Watkins Committee back in 1931, attaining the position of General Sales Manager and Vice President. During that time, he was instrumental and of a huge help to the athletic department as he arranged to fly several of our teams all across this country through the Watkins Corporation. He retired from Watkins in 1968 and immediately took the position at Winona State as Personnel Director and Administrative Assistant to the Vice President of Administrative Affairs. Clarence retired once again in 1975, but he's been an ever-present force at Winona State. In 1991, the Alumni Society presented him with the Distinguished Service Award. Clarence is making his home down in Pittsburgh, Kansas these days. And I need to say, Dr. Kruger and I made a visit down there last year, and he knew more about every single player on every single team at this university. This guy is sharp, and he must have some pipeline grapevine to keep that information going. He knew more about what was going on here than I think the president or I did. He makes his home down in Kansas these days near his son Craig, and he wanted me to point out that there are several of his family here, both Craig and Anita Currier, why don't you stand now? We'll get the Scott Currier, his grandson, and Christine, his granddaughter, and husband Dale. Did I get them all? Please join me in congratulating Clarence Currier, one of the youngest at Heart Hall of Fame inductees today, and our final inductee for this afternoon.
Let's do it once more. Jim, I appreciate that beautiful build-up, and I believe every word of it. Every member of my family is here but one. That's my good wife. She left for heaven about 2 weeks ago. I'd like to mention that I knew that young lady for 5 years. The first night I was out with her, I fell in love with her. And we got married after 5 years of courtship. Married for 72 years with the same woman. That should call for a hand, I think. I've lived in the Winona area for about 52 years of my life. It's probably the greatest place to live in the world. It's outstanding. I've had 46 years of employment. I've been honored on many, many different occasions, but this honor today is about the greatest that I've ever received. I'm thinking of Lou Gehrig right now. When he spoke at Yankee Stadium a short time before he died, he said, "This is the greatest day of my life." And that's about how it ranks right now. I've been close to Winona State since about 1927. In my younger days, I used to watch Pete Dinovic in action. Probably the only person here that's seen Pete participate. Wendell McKibben, Art Kern, and several outstanding athletes. Later on, I got associated with the university in the year of about 1952, at which time we decided to use our company plane for major athletic trips for the basketball team. Had a close friend and pilot by the name of Jack Olam that helped me do all the planning. And Jack flew the airplane for the 10 years. I think we did an outstanding job. Jack always pointed out that if you fellows win the game tonight, it's a free meal. Of course, it didn't cost Jack anything because the meal went out of his expense account. But it motivated the ball players. Something else that those flights produce is manpower for the J.R. Watkins Company. In other words, at one time, during my period of 37 years of the J.R. Watkins Company, we had 15 Winona State graduates in our lineup. And every one of the 15 advanced. They all made progress in the business. It was a factor in our company winning the Public Relations Award, one time competing with 100 direct selling companies. It created a lot of commotion. I'd like to mention just a few friends here. You know, a close friend is the best thing you can have and the best thing you can be. And a lot of people worked closely with me over the years. I'm thinking right now of Ron Ecker. Ron Ecker recommended me to the president of this institution, Dr. Dufresne. So I got the job through Ron. I traveled with Ron. It wasn't at all uncommon for Ron to have his chauffeur pull a Warrior bus right up in front of my home in West Mark Street. It created a commotion in the neighborhood. So when I was working for Watkins, I was traveling with the Winona State basketball squad. And I really enjoyed it. The other coach I'm thinking of right now is Les Wicke. Les Wicke I think I probably probably the first person at mess that when he come into Winona. I think I bought him his first meal. And Les enjoyed that. And we got along fine. I'll say a little more about Les's basketball team later on. Going down my lineup here, I'm thinking of Gloria Miller. She helped me in the Hall of Fame organization. During my years here, I developed 15 Hall of Fame members. We searched that many. Occasionally I had difficulty, and Gloria she backed me up to every extent. I'm thinking of Mark Patterson right now. Mark is the guy that found us the good seats at the state tournament. And Bob Leitzel accompanied me to the state tournaments. And that worked out. John Martin was a close friend. All the coaches were close friends. I can even see some of my neighbors in the audience today, close neighbors. I'm thinking right now of Dr. and Mrs. Tester. Mrs. Tester, Mary Tester, Mary, you prepared us the last meal that we had in Winona in November 1993, and you are a good cook. I'm thinking, no, I can't see him, but I think it's in the audience, Jack Gibbs. Jack, raise your hand wherever you're at. I guess he's not here. Well, I was a factor in recruiting Jack. Jack was an outstanding basketball player. His dad spoke up and he said, if my son, he's got to have employment, and if you can't find employment, he don't stay. Well, I found a job at the J.R. Watkins Company. Jack stayed, and he worked out very, very nicely in our lineup. We developed a Cagers Club over the years here. I was a little factor in developing that club. We had 200 members of that Cagers Club, 200, that produced, they paid $25 to $100 to join our club. The club raised approximately $25,000 a year. And last week he spent the $25,000 just as fast as it come in. I mean, occasionally we was on the verge of borrowing money, but it produced results. I'm thinking now of the Hall of Fame Club. The first two members on the Hall of Fame committee was Glenn Fishbacher and myself, a couple old heads, but we knew we had a good background and the people to nominate. We got this going very, very well, and from 1985 to 1993, I researched about 17 members, and I think probably Fishbacher recruited just about as many. Now I'm going to introduce here 6 or 7 people that I was a factor in recruiting over the years. I don't know how many people I recruited from Winona State University. It would almost take an adding machine. I tried a lot of them. In fact, I recruited a Rochester John Marshall student just last week that signed a letter of intent to come to this institution. He's a knowledge student. So we're still following up on these things. The first man I'd like to mention, I'd like to have you stand as I mention your names. Dave, you're the first man in my lineup, Dave Meister. Well, listen to my figures, though. Dave, you remain standing. Just stand up. I'm going to hit you one bit. Dave, I seen him perform in a state tournament back many, many years ago. He scored, I think, 59 points in 3 games. He played on the fastest basketball team that I had ever seen. I'm sure Dave will agree. He had an uncle that worked for my company at Seattle. His name was Jim Meister. I called Jim and I said, Jim, if you expect to hold your job with the J.R. Watkins Company, arrange to get that young master down at Winona. He said, I need the job. I said, well, if you want it, you need him down. Dave came down with his dad. He worked out with Don Cloggy and a few of the good ball players. And before he left town, he was in the Warrior lineup. Now, this boy scored 1,658 points in 3.5 years of playing basketball. That was an all-time record. He scored 91% from the free throw line, and I think that is still a record today, Dave. The first game he played as a freshman, he scored 21 points. Second game, he scored 30 points. This guy had 1 game under 20 points in 3.5 years of playing. I think you ought to give him another hand on that. The next man I have in mind, you got to remain standing, Dave. Stand right up there. The next man is Jim Tews. Jim, where are you at?
Standing.
Jim's a little bit older. He's up in my category, but he was an outstanding athlete. Jim was a high school coach for several years. In fact, how I got onto Jim, I was close enough one night to listen to his talk to his ball player on a timeout. And I said to myself, I'm going to hire that guy. And he wound up in our lineup. Jim worked in 3 sports. I don't know how many letters you won, Jim, but you did an outstanding job. You was our Watkins district manager at Portland, Oregon, involving 400 Watkins dealers. We had you on a bonus arrangement, and you made a few dollars, Jim. You was able to retire. So that paid off. The other thing about Jim, he found his wife in the Watkins business. Found his wife in the Watkins business. So that was a good fringe benefit, Jim. The other guy I have in mind is Jeff Evert. Where is Jeff? Take a look at this fellow now. This guy is close to 7 foot tall. He was an all-conference ball player at Zumbulla. Is that right, Jeff? Jeff is now a principal at Zumbulla and Wanamingo High School. He's put on a little weight since he's playing, Dave. I've noticed that. Another thing, Jeff, didn't you recruit your wife from Winona State? That's another guy that found a wife. There are a lot of fringe benefits in attending this school. The next fellow I have in mind, Ron Evian. Where is he? Where you at, Ron? Ron, can you remember about 35 years ago, we met you at the Hubble House at Maniville, Minnesota? Maniville, Minnesota is my hometown. We brought you the finest meal at the Hubble House. You had a good appetite. Before the evening was over, you was a warrior. I had seen you play in a state tournament. You're an all-state ball player. And Ron has a beautiful job today. He's a principal at Waseca High School. Another fringe benefit that Ron has, he found his wife at Winona State University. Right, Ron? Okay, you stand right up there, Ron. Okay. The next guy I have in mind, I have a big investment in this fellow. In fact, at times, it took all the money I could produce to keep him going. The guy's name happens to be Craig Currier. Craig, stand up. Craig happens to be my son. I don't like to brag on my son, but he did fairly well. He played 4 years at the college here. He was a captain for last year. He's an honorary member, I believe, of the all-conference lineup. Ron said, I don't know if I can keep him on the squad. So I talked to Bruce. I said, how much will it take to bail you out, Bruce? He said, $100. I took him down to the bank. He signed a note at the bank. I didn't sign it when I was with him. I signed it later on. He didn't know that. I said, you better pay that back or you will go to jail. He paid it back. Bruce today is, he's the superintendent of schools at Lyman, South Dakota. He was a coach for many years. During 6 years of coaching, he won 153 basketball games and lost 37 basketball games. The winning percentage last was 80%. That's greater than you ever won. So I was pretty proud of that. He's been inducted into the Huron University Hall of Fame. And I'm sorry he didn't make it. He was supposed to be here. The last two members that I want to mention here today are both in heaven. One is a man by the name of Miles Peterson. Miles Peterson was the personnel director at the J.R. Watkins Company. He's probably the greatest handler of personnel that I've ever worked with. Miles played 1 year of football at the University of Montana, 3 years of football at Winona State University. He was all conference for 3 years. He was a captain on the baseball team, and his daughter happens to be here today, Sue. Sue, will you stand up? You don't have to give a speech. Just stand up, Sue. Okay? The next person that I have in mind is Jack Olam. Jack was probably as great a friend as I have ever had in my life. Jack had to make a forced landing many years ago at Rockford, Illinois. And he had a heart attack in the air. The president of our company, Bud King, at the time said, you go on down and stay with Jack, take care of his hotel expenses, and bring him back in good shape. So I went down. Jack is a man that was the captain of our plane for 10 years, handling Warrior basketball players. And he was a dedicated fan. He loved this institution right here. If there was ever a prospect for the Hall of Fame, anybody that's looking for prospects, it's this guy, Jack Olam. So give it a lot of thought. So that kind of winds up my special friends. I might mention this before I conclude here. I want to mention Les's basketball team for a period of time while I was employed here. That team won 45 games in a row. While I worked here for a period of 8 years, they won 2 conference championships. They went to Kansas City twice. Not only that, but Les had a bench that was almost as good as the starting lineup. He had a terrific lineup of ball players. So I just wanted to pass that along. Now, in winding up here, I just want to say again, I appreciate this honor. I appreciate the previous honors, and I'm going to cooperate with this institution as long as I'm around, and I've been around for about 92 years, so I've got a little work to do. I may no longer be a part of Winona. I may no longer be living here, but I want to say this in my final remarks. Winona, Minnesota will always be in my heart, and this institution will always be in my heart. And I might tell you that I have 9 great grandkids, and if I have my way, every one of them will be attending Winona State University. But I guess that'll be up to Craig and Anita. But I'll work on it. And thank you again. That's the end of my remarks.
Clarence is a great one to finish up this afternoon. But he and all the other inductees, as you listen to their remarks and even some of the things they didn't say, you can see how important